Welcome to Responding to COVID-19 on TTT, Chalk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live Online on Facebook. I'm DK Ronstar. Gillian Goddard is an activist, a chocolate maker, farmer, and wears many other hats. Now, I saw a post of hers likening money to water, and that is just one of the things that we want to speak about. Hello, Gillian. Thank you for making the time to speak with us today.
Hi, DK. Nice to be here.
Our pleasure to have you. Now, I saw, and I'll just read out the start of that post. How does money move like water? Please explain that thought for me and carry us through that.
Okay, so I'll put it in a context in the sense that when we in art and when I in my life get puzzled, I look to the forest because it's a very complex system that contains a lot of the guidance that we need. And one of the ways that I noticed the forest works is that water flowed through the forest and it did things as it flowed down the hill. And if you deforested, the water functioned in a very different way. So over time, I started thinking about how we spend money and what happens when we buy something. And I started to realize that the same way that I think of water on our land, I started to think of money in the same way. The rain falls at the crest of the hill, and then as it comes downhill, what your desire is that it goes into every tree, every plant. Because it goes into trees and plants, it goes into the animals. It passes through your system over and over again, cycling down the hill over and over through different organisms. And it brought to mind the idea of how does money get spent? And the fact that if we actually deforest, the money just rushes down the hill. And that's very similar to purchasing things that are imported. We spend the money on them, the money goes to the store, to the distributor, and back on a ship. And that is very similar in my thinking to how water runs down a deforested hill. It really does nothing while it's there. And if anything, it takes the topsoil with it, and that runs down the hill. So when you are thinking of how do you develop your economy, it's super important to think about that dollar stopping in many places. So instead of the money going to the shop, going to the distributor, and getting back on a ship, what you would like to do is have the money go from the shop, go to the distributor or the maker of the goods, go to the maker from the distributor. The maker then buys the inputs that are local inputs. So for example, I'm a chocolate maker. So you would buy local cocoa beans, you buy sugar. The sugar is from the region, so at least it's passing through Guyana. And then you are fixing your machines locally. You are paying a local rent, you are buying local inputs, you're taking a local taxi or you're buying gas locally. So the money is cycling through the system many, many times before it actually ends up in its final spot.
Now, what opportunities does the disruption of COVID-19 present for that flow of money or water?
Well, we saw what happened. I mean, when the economy had to be contracted, which is basically what happened. So instead of money flowing across the entire economy, it moved into specific spots. But because we have so much importation, because most of our manufacturing is actually inputs that are imported from elsewhere, sometimes a big bag of something just gets put into smaller bags. The construction sector, all the sectors here are putting in many imported inputs. And so when COVID caused the economy to contract, and pretty much what was happening was we were eating, then it meant that the flow of money moved into that sector. And what I saw happening very quickly, because Trinidadians and Tobagonians, we are fast enough people. So within a short space of time, I started seeing some local economies developing within neighborhoods where people on the streets would offer to sell something you could pick up. And so the economy moved from being mainly restaurants that were outside of neighborhoods and using all imported material or mostly imported material suddenly we started seeing movement happening in the agricultural sector like I've never seen it. So that was very interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see if it's maintained. I mean, the manufacturing sector opened back last week, and from my reading of the data, it means products from away are now being repackaged into smaller bags, or inputs from away are being made into something that then gets sold locally.
What should we be mindful of? Because it's one thing to say, okay, well, we are not denuding, we're not cutting any trees so that we are hastening the speed of water or that flow. But what should we bear in mind if we want to actually slow down that flow of money? Basically plant trees to make sure that the money trickles into the system a little more.
Right. So it's not rocket science. Huh? You can look very quickly in a community or in your life and see where the money is going. Is it rushing down a hill to get back on a boat or in a bank to be wire transferred away into Forex? Or is it being spent locally? I mean, NAMDEPCO has made some good moves. So they have the local farmers market, and those also have people who process. So you're looking for locally processed goods that are made of local inputs. I'm hoping that at some point there's a little sticker we can put on goods when they're 50% local or more. Or I'm hoping that restaurants get some sort of voluntary system where if they're using 50% of their dollars to buy local products, not local labor, because all the labor is local generally, then I would like to see some sort of system where we're becoming a little more aware of what it is that we're actually putting into our houses and our bodies.
Now, one of the things I find interesting is that, and you just did it again, is this charge to individuals to look at self. Because many times you want change, it's kind of harder to do that change when that change needs to start with you. But you just spoke about it in terms of looking at your life and seeing where you can make a change, seeing what you are doing, being reflective, introspective, and taking steps yourselves, as opposed to saying, okay, well, what is the government or what is this larger body doing? What are some of the other things that we can say, okay, well, if I do this, it will have a positive reaction with regard to how this flows through the system. And I put that in, there's a qualifier of the Minister of Trade, Paula Gopi-Schoon. She was speaking about agriculture and the fact that there wants to be, or the government wants to have a little more focus on agriculture, even though it may not seem to derive that much income from outside, but at the same time, you need to look and put a little more emphasis on it, and that is what is planned to do. So would you have anything else that you would add in terms of that kind of focus, what individuals can do on a personal level?
Okay, so I think it is critical that individuals take action, and I also think it's critical that individuals have a say in what larger bodies do, and that we ask for an accountability. So one of the individual challenges is that sometimes a local product on the shelf registers a price that looks like a higher price. And that's where I think the larger groups have a role to play. I mean, we should be able to have the economics department in the University of the West Indies show us what it really costs. What does it actually cost when we individually spend less for that product? What's the quality of the product? What's the impact on our lives? How much does it cost in medical care later when we are actually buying products that are unhealthy for us, that have been harvested 2-3 months? Sometimes we get apples that are 8 months old that have actually been in chillers. And I know this because I had a fruit and vegetable store for a few years. And because I farm, there's a lot of invisible stuff that is hard for the consumer or the individual to actually be able to make a good decision, because we're not seeing. We need to see costs side by side. We need to see that when we are eating a lot of these kind of sensory stimulus junk food that's available, that's almost entirely imported, it looks cheap, right? What happens later on? How much does it actually cost us, even individually, when we have to be in hospital, or if we have to miss time from work, or if we become disabled or get diabetic, how much does that actually cost? And I think that's where the individual has a say, but the individual needs to also have information and to pressure the larger bodies to provide that information. It's quite difficult as a layperson to get that data, to know how much it's costing. I try all the time to find the data. How much is it costing for us to have these little packages of plastic, that these larger packages of plastic goods are being put into? What does that cost? What does it cost to have flowers subsidized here? It's subsidized in Canada and Russia, where we get it from. What does that cost compared to the price of cassava flour? Because there is a price differential. The cassava flour is significantly more expensive. So I think that there needs to be individual action, but there needs to also be action in the larger spheres. And one of the things that the individual can do there to add on is start planting food. It's not just about eating. I've worked out that if we keep 50% of the country under forest cover, which is what we need to do to stay healthy and to have an ecosystem without the set of floods and so on, then if we divide up the rest of the land, we have maybe about 18,000 square feet per person, right? I haven't taken out buildings and highways and so on. Can we plant all the food we need on 18,000 square feet a person? Maybe not. I mean, serious skill can raise it higher, but we can still take a big dent out. And how do you do that? To change behavior, you have to start small. Start planting a little Gelita bottle with something in it. It may not work at first, but keep going, create some neighborhood gardening groups, make sure that you talk to other people about gardening, post pictures. I'm seeing it happening. It's definitely happening. Trinidadian and Tobagonians have moved much faster in that direction than US people, because I started teaching online gardening classes when COVID happened. And I have people in the class mainly from Trinidad and Tobago, but I have a few people from the US, and they are having a harder time. We are a little closer to being able to provide some of our food. So individually, everybody needs to be planting something.
I want us to start speaking about the role of community with regard to food security and these kind of things after the break. Thank you for tuning in. This is Response to COVID-19 on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT on Facebook. Well, we're also on Facebook. Stay with us. We return after this. Welcome back. This is Response to COVID-19 on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and on Facebook, TTT Live Online. We're speaking with Gillian Goddard. We just spoke about some of the economy of food security. Now we want to get into the Alliance of Rural Communities of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for being with us once more, Gillian. Please tell us, what is ARC about?
Okay, so ARC is the Alliance of Rural Communities. The full name is of Trinidad and Tobago. And it basically started because a few individuals, myself, my partner, and a couple of friends, decided that it made sense to support cocoa growing communities to make chocolate. So that was about 5 years ago. And a few of us, I had just started making chocolate myself. And so I immediately started teaching it to my friends in different communities. And they taught it to other friends, and we gradually became much more organized. We formed a non-profit, and then we formed a company. And so in Trinidad and Tobago, we are mainly active in terms of chocolate making in 3 communities. We have an affiliated group. We taught 2 groups in St. Lucia, one that we started teaching in Guyana, one that we will hopefully teach soon in Nevis. So basically, the impulse of it was to make a farming community not only dependent on selling its raw materials out to the community. It's going back to the same story of let's let that water flow through as much as it can as it goes downhill. So instead of the cocoa beans being sold and the truck driving away from the community, the cocoa beans stay right there. They get made into different things there. They always used to be made into cocoa balls, but now it's cocoa balls, chocolate drinks, Then we also are responsible for making it into cocoa powder and butter. And as a result of that, we also have chocolate tours. But because our model is based on indigenous philosophy and on the forest model, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. So even before COVID happened, we had other streams of income in the groups. So yes, we were doing chocolate, but the chocolate was flavored with other things from the community, with orange peel, with cinnamon, and we also sold other things. So we always sold a produce box. All our cocoa and our farm products are grown on areas that don't have chemicals used, because we see what happens to the farmer health with the use of artificial chemicals, and what happens to soil health. So we, side by side with chocolate production, we were also selling produce and processed goods. So like we sell a Ruku paste, and we sell different things made from other products that you can find. And so that is definitely something that we always had in our movement.
Now, I'm lucky to remember having individuals walk through my neighborhood. Like there's this lady who used to be balancing herbs and spices on her head, selling Moby bark, and a snow cone man. There's the bread van. All now are still missing milk biscuit. But what has the response been to people finding out, well, wait, this is a possibility? Have you had new individuals saying, was signing on or subscribing through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Definitely. But I mean, I must say that even before COVID, things had started to change. So I think the economy was already tightening a little bit. And by the end of last year, we saw people starting to try to cook more stuff locally. And so our business, we used to be every 2 weeks, then we went to every week, and then we went to twice a week. And then we started increasing clients. But really, the big jump was in March. In March, we really saw things with lockdown just start going up. And by April, we really were at a different level. That's when we went to twice a week. And so now we are hoping that we have a community, right? Our customers are not just people who are doing a financial transaction. We are hoping to build a community. And with COVID, you really saw that having those community lines, if you knew a farmer, if you knew somebody selling a particular thing, then it was a little easier to get access to it. And we are hoping that as our model consolidates, we can hold out a model to farmers, to other producers of goods, that creating these small self-contained communities, very similar to a food co-op, is really a much more resilient way to do your business and also to buy your products, because then you know what people are putting into things, and you know that you can feel confident that they have a certain relationship with you rather than just a dollar first in the house.
I appreciate the way that you maintain and consistently use the word community. How important is it that you build your model, but this model can be spread outside so other people can take inspiration from it and do the same?
Right. Well, I mean, that is really a big part of what we do. That's a critical part of our philosophy, is to create a community that you can then systematize the rules, the laws, the processes, and very rapidly share it with someone else. If you look at the model that's called a franchise, right, that is how they do it. They systematize every single task so that even if they have a high turnover of staff, the next person just comes in and they just follow that list. So you break down your tasks and you make it easy to follow. And that is the model that we started from almost the beginning. So it meant that we were able to go to St. Lucia and teach a group how to make chocolate in 4 days, because the rest of the process was in place. We already had a way to print, we had a design for the labels. And so it means that when a community learns skills, they're very rapidly able to monetize the skills. So the franchise model is not a model that came out of some franchisee's head. It was an efficient model that was replicated all over, and it can be replicated for good or for bad. I mean, the colonial model is a replicated model. They went and they did the same thing in each country, so they were very rapidly able to colonize places. So creating models that are healthy, that are good for us, that are community oriented, that where it's a non-reforested model, the water is running down the hill and going through everything. We need to be doing that. We need to really get on top of systematizing the things that are working for us and recreating them and sharing them. We have an open source model. I mean, we learned how to make chocolate. We shared it with other people. We ironed out the kinks. We didn't go and say, okay, we're charging you money, da, da, da. No, I mean, that's what a business franchise does. That's not what this is. This is about creating a healthy space in which to live, whether it's your community, whether it's your nation, whether it's your region, and finding ways to create two-way flows so that the model is sustainable. That's the way that people have done. A lot of people have been doing that forever. That's people within the society now. There are groups that still do that. There are individuals still doing that. We just want to magnify and multiply those effects.
Now we have about 4 minutes more. There are 3 things I want to touch on. One, the use of different types of wrapping, the fact that people are using glass containers. I saw there's a picture where you are wrapping chicken in sawari leaves, whole chicken in sawari leaves. 2, how do you bring in new blood, fresh people, and engage younger audiences, both as consumers and as producers? And 3, how do you open up the minds of individuals? Because sometimes, if I think dasheen, yes, I can boil the dasheen, but there's so many other things that you can do with it. How do you expand that imagination?
Okay, well, I mean, my starting point is that colonization takes a big piece of indigenous knowledge and leaves it out. So it means that everything that we use, that we say, that we sing, everything is reduced to a fraction of what it actually is. And that includes food, and that includes packaging. And so in the colonial process, there was a removal of people's ability to utilize their intelligence in their local area. So in the past, people would have been very well versed in everything in their area and figure out ways to innovate, because that's what innovation is. And we have this crazy idea innovation is hydroponics, plastic with water running through it. No, the hydroponic system that was used in Mexico was way more sophisticated than those plastic tubes. So innovation is just a new way to solve a problem, according to my friend, Dr. Marcel. So we innovate all the time. The challenge is, how do you get that innovation to become part of your system and to be integrated? And once you get that happening, you'll find young people will join groups. What we have found is that in the communities in which we try to stay most involved, the community in which we're doing the most is Grassroots Safety, because several of our members from the original founding group live there. And that, it has been amazing to see how young people have stepped up to the plate, become chocolate makers, taught each other. Young people are not against agriculture. Young people are against systems that are stagnant, where the adults don't listen and think they know everything. And so getting things to change, getting young people involved, getting groups, our groups are often 50-50 male-female, which for community groups, you just don't see that. You don't see men in the groups. So there really are a lot of ways that by creating a system, making changes, letting all the members make changes, and then you integrate those changes, that it is very similar to the model that you will see in a healthy, natural ecosystem. And that's really a lot of the time where we are getting our solutions from.
How do people contact ARC-TT?
What's that?
How do people contact the Alliance?
Okay, so we are very active on social media. So you can go to social media and put in Facebook, the Alliance of Rural Communities. On Instagram, we have the New Rural TT. You can call us at 493-4358. So that's 493-4358. And so those are the 3 big ways. We also have a website. It's very, very basic, and it's called chocolaterebellion.com. And if you go there, you'll see our different forms. But any of those other ways, we are actually quite reachable.
All right, so we want to thank you so much, Gillian Goddard, for providing us with so much food for thought, no pun intended. But this has been responding to COVID-19, you laughing, responding to COVID-19 on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live Online on Facebook. Now, today's guest was Gillian Goddard. We're asking you to please continue to stay safe and alert, wear a mask when venturing out, Practice hand hygiene, physical distancing, and common sense. I'm DK Rostar. Thank you for tuning in.